Have you ever noticed that the most respected are rarely the most likable, that the most remembered aren't necessarily the kindest, and that those who truly gain traction rarely ask permission? Machiavelli knew this centuries before Instagram, coaching, or the millionaire mentality existed. He understood an uncomfortable truth. The world isn't driven by good intentions. It's driven by perception, strategy, and quiet power. And those who ignore this end up serving those who understand. The laws that make someone untouchable aren't spoken in public because they hurt the comfort of those who live by appearances. But they are what define who dominates the game and who is just another well-intentioned pawn. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, is harsh but fair. It shows that people don't treat you according to who you are, but rather according to what you represent. And that's why the good are ignored and the strategists are remembered. Machiavelli taught that it's better to be feared than loved, as long as one avoids being hated. Not because fear is superior, but because respect is rare. Respect is born of perceived strength, not offered kindness. You can be kind and still be respected, as long as you know how to use calculated force. The difference is subtle, but it defines destinies. This is not a manual of manipulation. It's a map of consciousness. Machiavelli's dark laws are not about hurting, but about seeing. Seeing what moves people, what weakens them, and what makes them follow those who seem to have control. And above all, realizing how you, without realizing it, may have lived your entire life trying to be accepted, when true power has always been in the opposite, in becoming necessary. Those who are necessary never beg. Those who are essential do not compete. Those who are untouchable do not need to be understood. The modern world has disguised submission with the word kindness. But what many call virtue is actually fear of rejection. Machiavelli would laugh at that, because he knew that virtue and fortune don't favor the passive, but rather the adaptable. Those who don't shy away from the game, but play it consciously. Who understand the value of appearing docile, but of thinking strategically. Who master the art of smiling without submitting, of yielding without losing power. And that's why this video isn't about pleasing the world. It's about learning to navigate it without being swallowed up. So, if you feel like you've been living below your potential, being ignored, unnoticed, or suffocated by imposed limitations, now is the time to turn the key. Machiavelli's dark laws that no one told you aren't about becoming cruel, they're about becoming conscious. Because when you understand the true nature of the human game, no one controls you anymore. Not fear, not judgment, not the past. And that's exactly where the journey to becoming what Machiavelli would call a true prince begins. Someone who understands power but wields it wisely. Most people don't realize how invisible they've become. They go with the flow, say what everyone else says, dress the way everyone else does, and react in the same predictable way when something goes against them. And it's precisely this predictability that erases them. Machiavelli would understand this clearly. Those who live under a politics guided by reality, not ideals, know that the world doesn't reward the just, but the striking. Being noticed is an art, and like all art, it requires technique. The first principle is simple and brutal. Self-awareness precedes impact. No one can stand out if they don't know the terrain they're treading on, and the terrain here is their own mind. The second principle is the appearance of virtue. Learn to appear upright even when making calculated decisions. That's how you survive in a game where everyone lies with smiles. The third principle is virtu, the ability to act with strength, intelligence, and timing. It's the antidote to the passivity of those who wait for the right moment. Machiavelli would say that the right moment is when you create the right conditions. The fourth principle is the mastery of fortune, the symbolic luck that only favors those who prepare. It's like in chess. The moves seem inspired, but in fact they're predictions 10 moves ahead. The fifth principle is the calculated use of force. Strength isn't shouting, it's knowing when to keep quiet. It's amazing how a simple, firm no can shift the energy field of a conversation. A strategic no, delivered at the right time, is worth more than 10 empty promises. The sixth principle is constant adaptation. The world changes faster than certainties. A person who wants to be noticed needs to update themselves emotionally and intellectually. There is nothing more magnetic than someone who renews themselves without losing their essence. The seventh principle is deliberate presence. When you're in a room, be there completely. Most people are there physically, but not energetically. Machiavelli, if he were alive today, would say, "Don't try to dominate the room, dominate the attention." And the eighth principle is strategic coherence. Speak, act, and decide so that each movement reinforces the image you wish to project. This is not falsehood, but symbolic engineering. Those who understand these 8 principles realize that power is not a matter of birth, but of applied consciousness. It's as if the individual ceases to be a secondary character in social theater and assumes the role of author. Every gesture becomes a political statement, every choice a silent assertion of strength. From then on, the gaze changes. The body communicates before speech. Silence becomes a tool, and people begin to feel, even without understanding, that they are before someone who doesn't play the same game, someone who doesn't seek approval, but respect. These principles aren't magical, but they are relentless. They require daily practice, observation, and the courage to go against the natural instinct to please. Start small. Instead of trying to be loved, try to be remembered. Instead of seeking sympathy, cultivate impact. Avoid being hated, of course, but don't be afraid of being misunderstood. Those who truly build power learn to endure the discomfort of being seen as enigmatic. The seduction of attention lies in mystery. Machiavelli knew being feared, or in modern times, being respected, is more effective than being loved out of convenience. And that's precisely where transformation lies. When someone internalizes these 8 principles, they no longer need to beg to be seen. Their energy becomes self-evident. It's no longer the invisible that demands space. It's the untouchable that naturally occupies it. And the inevitable question arises, if no one can truly hold you back, break you, or stop you, what makes you believe you still need their permission? Most believe that power resides in the hands of those with money, influence, or connections. But true power, the kind that cannot be confiscated, is born from understanding true human nature. Machiavelli observed that man is guided by fear, self-interest, and appearance. Those who understand this are no longer controlled. When you understand how the game works, nothing holds you back, because you begin to act with virtue and fortune, not emotion and impulse. It's like lifting the veil on a magic trick. Once you understand the mechanism, the enchantment disappears. Limitations that once seemed insurmountable are revealed to be merely poorly trained perceptions. The end, as he himself would say, justifies the means, and the means in this case is self-mastery. People can only break you if you still believe they need your approval. As long as you depend on external validation, you'll remain hostage to public opinion, and the public is fickle. Today, they applaud. Tomorrow, they stone. The secret lies in practicing the calculated use of force, especially emotional force. It's the ability to say no without guilt and yes without fear. This autonomy isn't arrogance, it's clarity. Those who understand this aren't cold, they're strategists. They understand that politics guided by reality, not ideals, requires a balance between empathy and self-preservation. A simple example: A professional who learns to turn down projects that don't value them is, in practice, reinforcing their authority. Respect always stems from limits. No one can stop you when you decide to act with awareness and purpose. Most people try to win with brute force. The wise win with direction. Machiavelli spoke of loyal armies, and this metaphor perfectly suits modern life. Your armies are your habits, your discipline, and your constancy. If you depend on external forces, on other people's motivation, circumstances, approval, you will always be a soldier fighting under a foreign flag. But if you create your own legion of daily actions, no one can steal your inner strength. This is how independence is built, one decision at a time. Being untouchable isn't about being unattainable, it's about being unshakable. It means understanding that everything that can be lost, status, money, relationships, doesn't define who you are. The real game lies in not despairing when the board changes. It's constant adaptability that separates kings from pawns. Consider history. Empires fell because they failed to adapt, while individuals without crowns but with conscience became immortal through influence. It's the same in personal life. Those who don't reinvent themselves repeat themselves, and those who repeat themselves rot. Understanding these laws is like finding the key to the psychological prison. It's realizing that no one can hold you back except yourself, that no one can break you except your attachment to what you can't control, that no one can stop you except the fear of appearing too ambitious. When an individual realizes this, they stop fighting for space and start creating space. You stop trying to convince and start influencing. And naturally, a disturbing question arises. How can we apply all this to the more concrete spheres of life, at work, in relationships, in daily choices, without losing our soul in the process? Power, when understood by Machiavelli, was not just a political tool, but a way of life. He knew that the same instinct that moves a prince before the throne moves anyone before a boss, a partner, or a friend. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, begins at breakfast. It's in the micro-decisions, the words you choose, the concessions you make. Every conversation is a silent negotiation between your essence and your need to please. The game never stops, and those who don't realize this end up being played. In the corporate world, for example, the professional who understands the calculated use of force knows when to stand firm and when to strategically retreat. They don't seek approval, they seek results. But the same goes for our love lives. Those who don't control their emotions become hostages to them, and no one respects those who are hostage to their own moods. Machiavelli would teach that avoiding being hated is wiser than constantly trying to be loved. This means cultivating respect, not emotional dependence. A practical example. Instead of constantly trying to please your partner, demonstrate clear boundaries and firm values. Presence gains weight when it has boundaries. It's emotional virtue, the inner strength that balances reason and sensitivity. Love, when mature, is not submission. It's an alliance between two strong wills. And those who understand this stop begging for attention and become naturally admired. In everyday life, these principles are revealed in detail, in posture, tone of voice, and how one reacts to conflict. A leader who practices the calculated use of force knows that a firm look can correct more than 1,000 words. A friend who applies the appearance of virtue understands that being trustworthy is more powerful than being nice. And an entrepreneur who practices constant adaptability doesn't fear market changes. He anticipates them. Machiavelli didn't preach coldness, he preached lucidity. And this lucidity, applied to routine, transforms even the most ordinary of days into a field of strategy. The mindset that emerges from these practices is that of someone who understands that power is not an event, but a habit. It is the sum of small, conscious choices. When you decide to wake up early, it's not just discipline. It's a sign of virtue, mastery of your own destiny. When you choose not to react to an insult, you are practicing politics guided by reality, because you understand that responding is giving the enemy a platform. When you invest in knowledge, you build your own loyal armies, your intellectual weapons that no one can confiscate. The result is a free mind, and a free mind is a force the whole world strives to tame. And then, inevitably, the difference between those who are seen and those who are underappreciated emerges, because it's not enough to wield power, you have to project it. It's not enough to understand the rules, you have to use them to change the narrative. After all, how can you change others' perception of you without having to beg for recognition? To be seen is to be noticed. To be underestimated is to be perceived as harmless. And paradoxically, Machiavelli would teach that both roles can be advantageous, depending on the moment. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows that power arises from an accurate reading of the context. Sometimes the invisible wins because no one fears them. Other times, the feared wins because everyone is watching. The art lies in knowing when to show yourself and when to let yourself be underestimated. The common mistake is to think that being noticed is the same as being displayed. The wise man does not display himself, he orchestrates perceptions. He knows that the calculated use of force includes knowing how much of himself to reveal. Mystery is a form of presence, and every presence that keeps secrets is magnetic. In the real world, those who master this distinction create impact without the need for noise. The professional who speaks little but delivers consistent results is remembered when words cease. They apply the principle of avoiding hatred and appearing virtuous. They act with visible integrity, but without naivete. The appearance of virtue is their armor. Their strategy is subtlety. The exhibitionist who seeks validation becomes predictable, and predictability is weakness. On the Machiavellian chessboard, the unpredictable is always the most feared. That's why some are underestimated only until they decide to reveal themselves. And when they do, it's too late. They've already dominated the scene. The difference between being seen and being underestimated is also the difference between projection and perception. Those who are seen dominate the frame. Those who are underestimated live within someone else's narrative. Changing the narrative to your advantage is an act of silent power. It's building a reputation while others try to understand who you are. And this begins with mastering your own image. Machiavelli would call this maintaining the appearance of virtue even when acting out of necessity. It's the mastery of perception. It's the CEO who makes unpopular decisions, but is ultimately remembered as a visionary. It's the friend who distances himself from the group on purpose, not out of pride. It's the lover who knows the value of silence when the other expects explanations. Being underestimated can be a strategic advantage. Those who believe you are weak let their guard down, and by the time they realize their mistake, it's too late. This is what Machiavelli would call using fortune with virtue, taking advantage of chance, but acting with calculation. Life is theater, and those who understand the psychology of roles know how to alternate between shadow and light as the moment demands. Sometimes invisibility is the armor that protects the power under construction. Other times, exposure is the glare that blinds the opponent. The key is to not become a prisoner of either. And that's where true mastery emerges. It's no longer about appearing strong or weak, but about controlling what others think you are. When an individual achieves this mastery, they don't just change the narrative, they write it. The way others look at you ceases to be a sentence and becomes a tool. And like any tool, it must be used with precision. But to sustain this, a deeper foundation is needed. Authority and authentic presence, which depend not on masks, but on essence. There's a stark difference between those who appear and those who impress. The former needs the attention of others to feel relevant. The latter makes that attention come naturally. Machiavelli would say the difference lies in virtù, the inner strength that allows an individual to project authority without needing to declare it. And this has nothing to do with expensive clothes, titles, or followers. It's about energy, clarity, and coherence. True presence isn't noisy, it's magnetic. When someone has conviction in their gaze, silence speaks. When their gestures are purposeful, the environment reorganizes around them. It's what he would call the calculated use of force, not to dominate, but to lead. Developing authority begins with self-mastery. No one respects someone who contradicts themselves out of anxiety. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, teaches that people follow those who convey security, not those who promise perfection. An authentic leader admits mistakes but doesn't apologize for existing. It's the difference between vulnerability and submission. And curiously, it's this strategic honesty that inspires trust. In everyday life, authority is built through consistency, following through on promises, keeping one's word, being predictable in value but unpredictable in strategy. A practical example. At work, when everyone reacts to a crisis with panic, the individual who remains calm, even without having all the answers, is immediately perceived as a leader. Authentic presence also arises from the appearance of virtue, not in the sense of pretense, but of communicated intention. When your actions reflect your principles, others sense it, even if they don't understand. It's the symbolic weight of character. But be careful, authenticity isn't a performance of transparency. It's a silent coherence. Showing too much weakens the mystery. The authority that enchants is the one that balances clarity with reserve. It's knowing how to smile without opening up completely. It's giving access, but not control. It's what Machiavelli would teach. Avoid being hated, but never become predictable. Impact, in turn, is the natural result of concentrated energy. Dispersed people don't generate impact because they don't know where to focus. Every yes said out of insecurity weakens personal power. Every no said with purpose multiplies it. The secret is choosing where to expend presence. Impact isn't about the quantity of appearances, it's about the quality of perception. And this requires constant adaptability, knowing when to be intense, when to be light, when to speak, when to observe. Strength lies in the calibration. A too firm speech tires, a prolonged silence intrigues. The master of impact understands the rhythm. When an individual learns to combine virtue with fortune, power with naturalness, strategy with humanity, they cease to be visible and become inevitable. People sense them before they see them, and this sensation is the true magnetic field of influence. It's the kind of presence that doesn't need to be remembered, because it's never forgotten. But there's something even deeper behind this, emotional freedom, because there's no point in having presence if it still depends on the validation of others. Then comes the provocation. Are you truly authentic? Or have you simply conditioned your worth to the limitations others have placed on you? Ultimately, Machiavelli didn't write about kings. He wrote about us, about the internal conflict between who we want to be and who we need to be to survive. The difference is that few have the courage to admit that the world is guided by realities, not ideals. That being good is easy, but being wise is rare. That the end justifies the means when the end is freedom, and the means is conscience. And perhaps this is what separates those who merely exist from those who truly impress. Some wait to be noticed, others build their own presence. The choice has always been yours. The invitation now is simple but demands brutal honesty. Have you been living by your will or by the will of others? Do people respect you for who you are or for who you pretend to be? And most importantly, when was the last time you acted according to your own virtue, even if it cost them approval? Machiavelli would say that life is a subtle war between being loved and being relevant, and that in the end, only the conscientious survive the illusion of pleasing everyone. Power begins when you allow yourself to be misunderstood, as long as you remain honest. From now on, apply this to your daily life. Use these laws as lenses, not weapons. Observe human behavior, but start with your own. Create your own loyal armies, habits, ideas, and actions that depend on no one. Be firm in your decisions, but flexible in your strategy. Constant adaptability is what separates what flourishes from what perishes. And remember, authority isn't the tone of voice that imposes, it's the silence that commands. If you master the inner game, the outer will naturally bend. Perhaps the world will never understand the depths of those who choose this path, but deep down, you don't need them to understand, just to realize, because those who become untouchable don't seek to be loved, they seek to be remembered. And those who are remembered, even in silence, have already won. Respect is the new power. Presence is the new crown, and a clear mind is the true throne. Now, if this made sense to you, if something sparked within your mind, even if silently, then you've already begun your transformation. Keep learning, questioning, and most importantly, growing stronger. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because this isn't about theory, it's about mastery. And believe me, once you understand what Machiavelli truly meant, no one will stop you.